introduce our team, but first give you all some background. How did we get here, y'all? So, in partnership with the Equity in Action Way Foundation, Research in Action launched the Justice in Institutions for Black Women, Girls, and Femmes initiative in 2025. Building on our work on Minnesota's Missing and Murdered African American Women Task Force in 21 and 22, this project expands our commitment to the safety of Black women, girls, and femmes. Despite significant threats to social justice nationwide, we continue to be actively committed to this work. The task force report identified many persistent systemic problems that make Black women and girls more vulnerable to violence than their white peers, such as inadequate trauma and cultural training for staff and poor interagency coordination. Poorly trained staff misidentify Black girls in crises as runaways or re-traumatize Black survivors who never return to seek help, housing, or health aid. Agencies unfamiliar with each other's practices may miss opportunities to ask key questions or offer information, and lack of data and confusion over strategies for intervention are preventing local, state, and federal bodies from addressing this crisis. The task force report articulated clear action steps and recommendations to eliminate these barriers, but those steps require additional research and community engagement to generate and uplift solutions to transform how systems save Black women, girls, and femmes.
And so that's exactly what the Justice in Institutions Initiative intends to do and has been doing. So in 2024, when the Equity in Action Foundation was awarded a Bush Community Innovation Grant, it contracted with Research in Action to undertake a 5-year process to create an evaluation tool for the state of Minnesota and all of its counties to gauge the success and needs of their programmatic outcomes and guide innovative changes to ensure that all of the programs serve the needs of Black women, girls, and femmes. From state agency staff to shelter workers, those on the front lines of crisis response and prevention must have the right skills, resources, and relationships to gain the trust of Black women and girls and femmes who have for so long been re-traumatized by institutions that have failed to protect them or further harm them. So activities in the first year focused on the first step towards creating this scorecard, conducting a statewide survey, the first ever, of Black women, girls, and femmes to get a baseline measure of how Black women, girls, and femmes in urban, suburban, and rural Minnesota experience systems and institutions that the task force report identified as contributing to unsafe conditions: housing, healthcare, education, and criminal justice systems. The survey explored how Black women, girls, and femmes' experiences with and perceptions of these institutions influence their confidence that the institution will help them when needed, stress levels they experience during interactions with that institution and its staff, and willingness to seek support or resources in the future. Supported by a coalition of Black women statewide, we got 767 participants from all parts of the state. And after the survey concluded, we invited folks to apply for the Community Action Council that will guide the scorecard creation. The Community Action Council brings together people with lived experiences of the issues and problems that we research at RIA, as well as people with positional power within key institutions and institutional stakeholders who will commit to championing the recommendations that comes from this community-led research. Over 60 Black women, girls, and femmes applied to fill 18 available seats, and the CAC started its work this year. So, as you will hear from the team in just a moment, not only did we do the statewide survey, but also designed focus groups and interviews to get additional depth and detail on people's experiences, and this is helping us create this evaluation framework with the CAC to design scorecards for agencies across systems. And these scorecards will help county leaders and program staff determine where to focus their efforts to transform how they serve, interact with, and support Black women, girls, and femmes in Minnesota. So we're really excited to have the Justice for Black Women, Girls, and Femmes team here to present today to share with you some of the highlights from this work.
And before I invite the team up, I want to clarify for folks that This is a 5-year initiative, and we have a very strategic goal. Next year, we intend to introduce a bill at the state legislature that supports all county-based programs, particularly in what is our FHPAP programs, and using the evaluation tool that Black women and girls actually help us co-create. So I want this to be really clear. Our organization is very much about research that moves action and policy change. And we are co-creating a tool that we intend to push at the legislature. And right now, we have a signed MOU with Hennepin County, who is willing to pilot that tool. So we are very intentional about using research in an active and intentional way. We are still looking for rural partners to jump on board. It has served to be a challenge, but not one I don't think I can get through. All right, so I would love to introduce our lovely team. As I hear your name, please come up and join us, and I'll hand it over. So Dr. Amanda Bolton is a senior project manager on our team. Please welcome Dr. Amanda Bolton. Emily Cavazos is a co-project manager on the team and is also our GIS guru. Ben Levy is our lead research support specialist on our team. And in addition to Ben's fierce style, they are one of the most insightful beings I've ever met. Aya, please join us right now. I love me some Aya. She is a research support specialist on the team, hailing from Morocco, bringing all the vibes. I'm gonna hand it over to the team because I have some really amazing information to share with y'all.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here at our Community Research for Liberation National Convening. A lot of familiar faces, so very excited to have you all in space with us. Today we're excited to share the updates from the Justice in Institutions for Black Women, Girls, and Femmes initiative. This work is grounded in the experiences, the expertise, and the leadership of Black women, girls, and femmes across Minnesota. Today we're excited to talk about some data. And it's not just about data, it's really about understanding how systems experienced in everyday life, how systems are experienced in everyday life, what communities are telling us that they need, and how we move towards systems that are truly responsive, accountable, and healing. So today we'll walk through several parts of our initiative. We'll begin with a brief overview of our statewide survey results. I know a lot of you are excited about that because a lot of you were part of that process. We'll talk about how we engage the work through community engagement. We'll talk about our focus groups that we've done, our interviews, and partnership building across the state of Minnesota. We'll then introduce what we've been working on, our evaluation tool that we're developing, including the scorecard framework and the domains that emerge from that data, and the community feedback we've gathered. We did work with the CAC on that scorecard and those domains. And after that, we'll share findings across systems and experiences. And finally, we will close with our next steps and talk about where the project is moving forward in subsequent years. All right, so in 2025, we conducted a statewide survey focused on understanding Black women, girls, and femmes experiences with institutions across Minnesota. Dr. Squires and Dr. Lewis mentioned some of that earlier, but I wanted to give you kind of a clear understanding of that survey. What did we ask participants? Well, we asked them about several key areas. One, their confidence that institutions would help them when needed. Also, we asked about their stress levels during those interactions with those systems. And we asked about whether they were willing to seek support or resources from those systems in the future. And like Dr. Squires mentioned earlier, we looked at 6 major systems. So we looked at healthcare, behavioral health, education, housing, criminal justice, and child protection. So our goal was not simply just to understand whether services existed, but whether people actually felt supported, respected, safe, and cared for when interacting with these systems. So to make these findings more accessible, easier to understand across different audiences, we created a dashboard with grades using several different constructs measured in the survey. And I will say all of you should be able to have access to that. There's an executive summary on every single table for every person in here. There is a QR code and you can scan that. I know there's a lot of QR codes out today, but that's an important one. So that will give you access to that dashboard and our survey results. There's also a smaller slip. That is a form. We are seeking feedback, and I'll talk about that at the end of the presentation. So have those on hand as we walk through this. So what did we look at here? So we averaged participant responses and developed 5 core scores. So we are looking at confidence, we're looking at help-seeking likelihood, barriers to seeking support, experienced stress, and anticipated stress. We also created an overall score that reflected the average across those different measures combined. This approach really helped us to move beyond just isolated questions within the survey and instead look at broader patterns of institutionalized experiences across the different systems I mentioned earlier. All right, so looking across all survey respondents statewide, we see some important differences between the systems, as we can see on this slide. So healthcare, behavioral health, and education each received a C+ overall, while housing received a C. Criminal justice and child protection received the lowest grades, both earning a D+. And what this ultimately tells us is that no system received an A or a B statewide. Even the highest systems have significant room for improvement. At the same time, the findings suggest that participants reported particularly challenging experiences within criminal justice, which is not surprising to many of us, and child protection services. So when trust was very low and then stress levels were very high. These grades should be viewed as a starting point for much deeper conversation rather than just a final judgment. The purpose is to really identify opportunities for learning, for accountability, and for improvement. And one really important feature of our work that I'm really proud of is that we don't just stop at statewide averages. Experiences with institutions can vary dramatically depending on where someone lives. So because of that, we disaggregated grades by region to better understand geographical differences. This slide shows us an example, kind of zoomed in on housing. While housing received an overall statewide grade of C, the regional data tells us a much nuanced story. So participants living in several regions, so including the Central Region, 7-county metro, Northeast, and the Western region, graded the housing system as a C. This suggests that respondents in those areas reported moderate levels of confidence and willingness to help, but also experienced ongoing challenges and stress when navigating housing systems. However, not all regions had the same experiences. Participants in South Central and Southeast regions gave the housing system the lowest grades statewide, that D+. So this indicates that respondents in those communities reported more challenges overall, and may be experiencing greater barriers as well when seeking out housing support and other resources. So what's important here is that if we looked at the statewide grade of C, we would miss the fact that participants in certain regions are reporting substantially more negative experiences than others. So this type of analysis really allows us to look at counties. It helps us really think about counties and their service providers, their advocates and policymakers, and how those individuals can identify what additional support needs to be done in those regions. It also helps us to think about opportunities to learn from those regions that are reporting some of the stronger outcomes. It also reminds us that place absolutely matters. People's experiences with institutions are not just shaped by the system itself, but also shaped by local resources, by relationships, by policies, and service networks available within their local communities. And another part of the work I'm really proud of my team for working on is this breakdown of different demographic groups. So we know that not all Black women, girls, and femmes experience these systems in the same way. So that's why we have further disaggregated findings by these demographic characteristics. So we looked at disability status, we looked at LGBTQ+ identity, and we also looked at income level, amongst others. So looking at the data through this particular lens allows us to really understand how these experiences differ across groups, and where certain disparities exist. This approach helps us move beyond averages and really pays attention to communities that may experience unique barriers, also different challenges or strengths within particular systems. So this slide shows an example with housing. So among Black women, girls, and femmes with disabilities, those participants graded the housing system overall as a C-. While confidence and willingness to seek help were both in the C range, anticipated stress and experienced stress received D+ grades. What this suggests is that many respondents with disabilities are approaching housing systems with more elevated stress and continue to experience stress during those actual interactions. And we see a similar pattern among LGBTQ+ respondents. Those participants also graded the housing system as a C-, and their experienced stress within housing also received a D+. So while participants reported some willingness to engage with housing systems, stress remained a significant part of those experiences. And when we look at low-income respondents, they reported a significantly stronger overall grade of C. They graded confidence and willingness to seek help as both C+, so indicating slightly more positive perceptions of housing services. Although overall stress really remains an area where improvement is still needed across the board. What this demonstrates overall is that the same institution can be experienced very differently, depending on who is interacting with it. So looking beyond the overall grade really helps us to identify what barriers may be concentrated and where targeted improvements are needed. So ultimately, disaggregating this data allows us to move from asking, how is housing performing overall, to asking, who is being served better, and who may still be facing challenges within these systems. Okay, so as I mentioned previously, we did want to share these survey findings with everyone, make them more accessible and interactive today. So there is a QR code, and that leads directly to the dashboard, but it is also on the executive summary that you see in front of you. So we would love your feedback. We continue to upgrade this dashboard, and we would love your feedback on it. The little slips that you have also links to a form, and we are just soliciting feedback. Throughout this process, we've been soliciting feedback everywhere. So we've asked our council members to provide feedback, and we continue to update that dashboard based on that feedback. So please share your information. There's a few short questions. It should take about 5 minutes. So what feels helpful about the dashboard? What feels very unclear? What would make it more useful? And also, what would make it more accessible to everyone? So yes, please continue to add feedback as you see fit. I'm gonna go ahead and hand it to Emily, and she will share what we've done in year 2, because this was all just year 1, so.
All right, I did just want to mention that the dashboard is different on your desktop versus your phone. So if you have time later after the convening to go on a desktop, or right now, that also might give you a different perspective. All right, so I am going to share more about what we've done this year to add on to that baseline understanding of how systems are experienced. All right, so last year through the statewide survey, our goal was to build a stronger baseline understanding across Minnesota about how systems are experienced by Black women, girls, and femmes. Through our open-ended responses on that survey, respondents underscored the need to dig deeper into reasoning about why people answered the way that they did, noting that numbers alone can't tell the whole story. So taking the open-ended responses alongside our desire to create a scorecard rooted deeply in the needs and experiences of Black women, girls, and femmes in Minnesota, the Research and Action team planned a series of focus groups and interviews for the spring of 2026. And with those focus groups, we really wanted to understand specifics around what is causing stress and impacting the way that systems are or aren't effectively providing services to Black women, girls, and femmes, and then what's working and details about what needed to change. So ultimately, all of this work is moving us towards the development of the community-informed evaluation framework to ensure that systems become more accountable and responsive. So we leaned on partners heavily that we made during year 1 of this project. Shout out to our statewide partnership coordinator, Corey. So we used networks that we created in year 1 to really facilitate outreach for focus groups, individual interviews, and even the survey of the members of our statewide coalition. This outreach method allowed us to continue the work and simultaneously plan for flexibility alongside our partners, really to respond to the political and social violence unleashed by Operation Metro Surge earlier this year. We held discussions about how to best move forward with the data collection work in ways that prioritize safety and care for staff and participants. We prioritized community safety and well-being and recruited participants that had experiences of system, regional, and identity diversity. Our relational approach was especially important in areas like rural areas where people may already feel over-researched, disconnected from institutions, or hesitant to participate in formal processes. So for our focus groups, we held these focus groups in different regions across greater Minnesota to really get that nuanced understanding of our baseline survey results. So specifically, we went to Rochester, Duluth, Fergus Falls, and Marshall, Minnesota to ground those survey findings in lived experiences, and to ask about the why, how, and specific processes behind the responses that we received. Hearing more from Black women, girls, and femmes in Greater Minnesota was particularly important to learn how experiences with systems are shaped by geography, transportation, local infrastructure, and limited access in ways that can look very different from metro areas. The focus groups also help strengthen partnerships even more across regions. So when we arrived and drove out to these different areas of Minnesota, we really were able to make space and build some community building activities with the folks that were present in those focus groups with us. And so that really created space for deeper, more grounded community-based conversations as well. And we're excited to potentially work with those partners more and more in the coming years as well. So for interviews, they built both on the statewide survey results and the focus groups by creating space for one-on-one conversations. We intentionally interviewed people who brought either lived experience, organizational perspective, or both. In many cases, people were navigating systems personally while also supporting others through their advocacy, organizing, or service work. We also wanted to make sure the project reflected intersectional experiences that can be overlooked or generalized in broader systems conversations. So we intentionally centered interviews with people connected to immigrant experiences, trans and gender nonconforming experiences, disability and chemical health experiences, among others. So across our 7 interviews spanning 3 regions, many including the metro area, people shared not only experiences of harm and barriers, but also very concrete visions of what support, dignity, accountability, and responsiveness can look like. Finally, we also sent out a statewide coalition survey. So our coalition, once again, is built on the partnerships that we really made in year 1. And so that survey that we sent out to all of our partners focused on organizations serving Black women, girls, and femmes across Minnesota. The goal was to better understand how Black women and femmes at community organizations actually think about trust, accountability, and service delivery in practice. We wanted insight into both challenges organizations are navigating and the approaches they believe are helping to build stronger relationships with community. And we ultimately had 19 respondents representing many different regions and service areas for that short survey. So different pieces of the work that I've talked about today served different purposes. The 2025 statewide survey helped us identify those broader patterns across systems and regions. Focus groups and interviews helped us understand lived experiences, context, and nuance underneath those patterns. And the Trust and Accountability Survey helped us identify examples of practices and approaches from organizations that people view as supportive, accountable, and trustworthy. Throughout the project, we adjusted our outreach strategies based on participation, access needs, scheduling realities, and changing conditions. Some engagement happened in person, some virtually, and in many cases, we had to shift approaches in real time based on what was or was not working. And overall, as we've mentioned and highlighted a lot today, this process allowed us to build relationships, to listen across different contexts, and understand both patterns and lived realities at the same time. All right, so moving from data into our actual evaluation tool that we are now working on, the scorecard, we have begun building out this tool by first identifying some domains within it. So those are kind of large focus areas or themes that we need to identify, kind of key points to ensure that organizations and different county programs focus on for their accountability and improvements. So the scorecard and the included domains will reflect community priorities based on all of the data that I've talked about today. It should define expectations for systems while being broad enough to be adapted to specific organizations. And the scorecard and the indicators that we outline will support accountability and change. In building out the domains, we first built out these areas and defined them as a team, but we brought these definitions to our Community Action Council for review and discussion. The Community Action Council is a group of 17 Black women and femmes from across the state, as well as our key stakeholders and partners from the 2 county-funded programs that we're working with in Hennepin County to pilot that evaluation framework. We all meet monthly, and this council is consistently asked to provide feedback on or co-create each piece of the work that we are doing. So we workshop the domains and their definitions with the CAC and are in the process of streamlining the indicators under each domain. So what are our domain areas? The 3 domain categories that we identified were program and service delivery, staff performance and training, and accountability to community. So once again, these really came up from the themes that we saw in the survey data, the focus group and interview data, and what really emerged as areas that need focus. So I will share the definitions of each of these domains with us today. So first, program and service delivery. It's defined as understanding how efficiently, clearly, and reliably services are provided to Black women, girls, and femmes, where efficiency refers to how timely programs and services are delivered in a way that fully resolves problems for Black women, girls, and femmes, where clarity refers to program and services accessibility, and where reliability refers to the care taken to meet Black women, girls, and femmes' needs around emotional, mental, and physical well-being. Staff performance and training was defined as how staff are recruited, consistently trained, and evaluated in ways that align with the well-being of and better outcomes for Black women, girls, and femmes. And finally, accountability to community was defined as how program leaders and staff work to create engagement strategies to consistently collaborate with and proactively solicit critical feedback from Black women, girls, and femmes to determine what change is needed, how program leaders and staff determine implementation plans that will be transparently shared back with Black women, girls, and femmes, and how they take action to implement it. All right, so I will pass it over to Ben now to dive a little bit deeper into these domains.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Emily. So as Emily mentioned, I'm going to get a little more into the cross-cutting finding areas, or essentially what informs the items that are going to be included under each of these 3 domain areas. So in our April Community Action Council, or CAC meeting, we heard that there were 3 themes that can and should be applied across all 3 domains rather than being confined to only one of them. These 3 cross-cutting findings are accessibility, impact on well-being, and proactivity. When we say accessibility, we refer to minimizing barriers and creating systems of support to help navigate barriers that may be outside of a given organization or program's control. All, again, while focusing on people's whole selves first and foremost. Building on this theme of paying attention to Black women, girls, and femmes' full selves, impact on well-being refers to the holistic attention that is paid to Black women, girls, and femmes' full humanity when folks show up to programs or to receive services, while proactivity asks how systems and the professionals who work within them may provide services in a way that does not require additional labor from Black women, girls, and femmes who are seeking services or participating in the programming that they are offering. So as I go through these next couple of slides here, all examples that I'm going to share and all of the quotes and stories you will see on the slides are either from our focus groups or interviews across the state. So I just wanted to provide that context before we get into it. So focusing first on accessibility, as I mentioned briefly, this cross-cutting finding area emphasizes how services must be provided in a way that ensures everyone who seeks them is able to receive what they need. Within the staff performance and training domain on the left side of the slide here, we learned that relationality is central to accessibility. Forms, accessibility forms, cannot be the end-all be-all. Oftentimes, these forms, without relationships in place, places folks, particularly youth, as we can see here, in situations in which they do not receive the accommodations or support they need in order to participate in programming or receive services. The importance of relationality is reinforced when we look at accountability to community, as this quote stresses the reality that accessibility is not just about meeting needs solely within the context of program or service delivery. It also takes into account social, political, and environmental contexts that may impact folks' ability to show up. And in the case of this quote here, referring to Operation Metro Surge and the ICE occupation of the state earlier this year. And even further, within program and service delivery, where we know, again, that access does not and cannot ever look like one thing. Turning over to impact on well-being, we heard throughout our focus groups that when Black women, girls, and femmes seek services, whether housing, healthcare, or education, providers, direct service providers, all too often only listen to talk back or flat out refuse to act on expressed needs. We heard folks share with us that this creates situations in which advocacy, whether it be for themselves or for others, becomes the default, and that takes a toll on mental, emotional, and even physical well-being. As we shift to the middle of the slide here, under the accountability to community domain, we see another facet of what we aim to address through this focus on impact on well-being. The highly problematic reality that all too often Black women, girls, and femmes are expected to perform a certain way in order to gain access, whether that be to programs or specific services. Thinking of impact on well-being in relation to accountability requires addressing this by creating spaces in which folks can show up as they are without performing in a particular way. On top of this, we heard across our focus groups, with one example on the right side of this slide here, that oftentimes folks have to repeat themselves after already providing information during an intake process, something that, again, takes a toll. Addressing this within the program and service delivery domain, this may look like requiring the maintenance and communication of records between professionals who are managing intake processes and those who are providing services, while obviously adhering to any applicable confidentiality laws, such as HIPAA for those who handle protected health information. Finally, I want to go through proactivity. This finding area in particular was uplifted in a conversation with our CAC and is crucial to ensuring that services are not only being offered in a reactive fashion. Thinking about this in terms of individual professionals' actions, we heard how a staff member at a college in Greater Minnesota used their positional power to dismantle barriers faced by Black women and femme students rather than only helping them circumvent the barriers or address the impact of them. Shifting over to accountability to community and thinking of what follow-through on what Black women, girls, and femmes expressed needs and priorities are, I want to jump back to what I was talking about just a minute ago, taking a holistic approach. By recognizing the limitations of the services a given organization may be able to provide, proactivity may look like creating a network of services are having a referral program, connecting folks to what they need without having them need to take on the labor of searching and navigating oftentimes opaque, dense, or otherwise unclear processes. And last but not certainly least, we can see on the right side of this slide here what it may look like for programs or services to be offered in a proactive manner. When professionals take on the onus of getting licensed in each state their client moves to, they are not only creating continuity of care, but they are also building rapport and trust that services will be delivered consistently. This really demonstrates how drastically individual professionals' actions can impact service delivery. So with that, we're going to shift now to look at two of these domains. First, accountability to community, and then my colleague Aya will take us through staff performance and training. So before we dive into this, I just want to reiterate the two key components of accountability that Emily mentioned just a moment ago. The first of which is gathering feedback and involving community consistently and proactively. And the second is following through on action based on community's needs and priorities and ensuring that community are updated as these plans for action are developed and implemented. So as we narrow in on these domains, we're going to look at both organizational and individual professionals' actions to explore how these domains were built up using what we have learned in our qualitative data collection processes this year. So here on this slide, we can see that all too often, when organizations hold and conduct community input processes, they're doing it for appearances only, right? It looks on paper like we were all involved, but when people go to make the actual decisions, they went away with all the ideas that came from lived experiences. Again, this stresses the reality that all too often folks are more interested and invested in maintaining appearances rather than creating substantive opportunities for Black women, girls, and femmes to shape change-making efforts. And this is something that did not just come up in this focus group, but came up in conversations we had with CAC members and in the data walk that we had to share out some additional information back in February. So how may we go about addressing this? So in our trust and accountability survey with Black women and Femmes service providers, we sought to learn what is currently working. Here we can see one of our partners highlighting their advisory council that works to surface hidden barriers like language, documentation, timing, and trust to simplify processes and align program requirements with real-life circumstances. By doing this, they are ensuring that involvement and feedback is not a one-off instance, and that those who are looped in to feedback processes are also brought into decision-making, directly addressing what we heard on the slide before, by ensuring that Black women and Femmes' voices are included in the decision-making processes and that systems do not do away with the wisdom of lived experience. Moving on, across the systems we explored in our statewide survey, you can see here only 28% of respondents, on average, across systems, indicated that they were confident that services would be delivered in a timely manner. Placing this within the context of some of the open-ended responses we received, in which we heard about the importance of follow-through, we aim to address this through this domain by working to hold institutions accountable for meeting the needs and priorities of Black women, girls, and femmes. In doing so, we're hoping that this domain when taken on the organizational level, will help improve confidence in service delivery through demonstrable action that is aligned, again, with Black women, girls, and femmes' needs and priorities. So on this slide here, we can see how this may be addressed through organizational action on communities' priorities. Access was a key thread in one of our key informant interviews with the leader of a nonprofit organization in the Twin Cities metro area. They shared that they have gotten funding in order to support getting documentation for folks, because folks can't focus on their training when they're trying to figure out who is going to snatch them or what's going to happen to them. Here, we can really see the first element in teal of accountability to community, determining the need for getting folks documentation so that they may come as their full selves and show up present to events and programming that this organization is offering. So what does the second half of accountability to community look like? So on this slide in pink text, we see the follow-through aspect of it. Seeking, applying for, and securing funding to get folks the documentation that they need. In following through on this, this organization demonstrates accountability to immigrant and/or refugee communities by tangibly helping folks navigate barriers they may experience to attending events. And again, I want to reiterate that these are not barriers that this organization is creating. This is thinking about barriers that exist outside of a given organization's control. And still, this organization is taking the action to ensure that the folks who are coming to their events are able to do so safely and as their full selves. On this slide here, we see that only 44% of survey respondents, on average, again, indicated that they were willing to seek services from any given institution in the future. And given that, we know that work needs to be done to improve service delivery that is aligned with communities' needs and priorities. When we place this within the context of our focus groups, we know that this requires more than organizational action. It requires changed action and behaviors from staff. But what does this look like? So shifting over to professionals' actions, across responses to our trust and accountability survey, folks made it clear that building relationships with those they serve is central to their work. Here, we see data that shows our partners regularly show up in the communities they serve. Even with those who have selected other on this slide, noting that it depends on the work that they are doing. By showing up consistently, they signal accessibility, commitment to needs beyond what may solely exist within the organizational space, and build rapport that will aid them in navigating harm and create an openness for folks to seek services. This relational facet of accountability helps lay the foundation for navigating repair when and if it is needed, and change work. So taking all of this together, I know I've been talking for a minute. We're going to be working with our CAC in June to create scoring items within this domain and informed by the data that we've gone through that will fill out this domain.
Thank you, Ben. So I'll be talking about our second domain, staff performance and training. And I want to start by saying that this isn't just about checking a box on training or annual reviews. It's about two main things: how staff are prepared to support Black women, girls, and femmes, and how their outcomes are evaluated against the goals that Black women, girls, and femmes themselves have defined. And we're really going to look at what shapes people's experiences, from the smallest things, like you can see on the slide, just someone complaining about their Wi-Fi and feeling like staff are holding the line and gaslighting them, with their internet issues. Data isn't just about the interaction itself. It's about who people are interacting with and what they believe going into it. So when Black women, girls, and femmes walk into any system, whether it's healthcare, housing, child welfare, education, they don't arrive as blank slates. They arrive with lived experience, community knowledge, and often a legitimate anticipation of harm. And when we hear from people directly, we see how this plays out. People describe interactions that are supposed to be supportive, but instead feel uncomfortable, judgmental, or coercive. So for many, these interactions don't build trust. They reinforce harm. That's why this domain isn't just about nice staff. It's about structural preparation and accountability. So across all systems that we examined, healthcare, education, criminal justice, housing, and child protection, the majority of respondents said they never or rarely interact with professionals who share their racial or ethnic identity. That means that the system lacks relational proximity and racial alignment, and that really shows up in the way people experience and anticipate stress going into these institutions. And we really see that from our statewide survey. So what people are anticipating isn't abstract. It's grounded in what they've experienced and what they've seen happen around them. They're feeling like they're not being listened to, there's failure to follow through on behalf of the staff, stereotypes, assumptions, feeling judged, and a lack of openness. So what did we hear people wished they experienced and what they would want to see going into these institutions and especially interacting with staff? Preparation starts before training. It starts with who is in the room. Our framework includes a specific focus on recruitment and hiring, not just for the frontline staff, but for senior leadership as well. Because identity concordance matters from what we heard from our focus groups, our interviews, and our survey. One CAC member really noted that unless you have a mainstream organization where you have a Black woman leading, even when she is in that position, she is herself fighting against a system that was not designed to have someone like her in leadership. So we're asking organizations to not only hire diversely, but to track who gets promoted, who gets laid off, and whether these processes are fair. And that's how we see accountability. So organizationally, how does this play out? Organizations say they value client-centered care, but staff are evaluated on paperwork speed or volume. Someone shared with us their experiences with a doctor. I had a doctor tell me one time, when I asked, was there anyone in the building that looked like me, the doctor said no. Why would you want to seek another doctor? Because I can do the same thing a person of color can. And the person let her know, well, I don't feel as comfortable with you than I would with someone that looks like me, and left. One of the main reasons across all institutions of why those institutions were avoided is because people were concerned they would be treated unfairly because of their race, ethnicity, or background. So then, what are we proposing here in all of this? We're proposing specific measurable items, taking into consideration all the negative things that we heard, from lack of training and preparedness, the absence of targeted processes, and the gaps of representation. For example, 5 business day response requirements from staff, a client-led assessment of staff performance, monthly manager check-ins, specifically about training, application, and community engagement. One of the most consistent themes in our data is exhaustion from repetition, having to have the same interaction within the system with different staff. So we're requiring organizations to maintain a confidential intake record for at least 1 year and ensure warm handoffs. So clients don't have to tell their story over and over again to different people in the same organization. Training cannot be a one-time online module. We're requiring quarterly longitudinal training that covers both job-specific skills and people-specific competencies, like anti-racist practice, de-escalation without police involvement, and linguistic accessibility. So we really want to make sure that we're listening to what Black women, girls, and femmes are telling us. And we really look forward to seeing where the impact of these recommendations go. So I know this was a lot of information. Thank you for bearing with us up until this point. So what are we going to do with all of these findings? From findings to actions, what's next for us? And so one of multiple of our concrete next steps is first finalizing the scoring items that you just heard about with our CAC members. We're going to be partnering with 2 county programs to pilot our evaluation tool and its implementation. We're going to continue our data collection with another statewide survey on open period, which we hope to be annual. And our survey data will also allow us to update our dashboard, which I hope you've taken a look at already, and submit your feedback, please. But yes, thank you so much for listening to us, for your attention and time. And I'll be handing it off to Tyre for our Q&A.
All right, while we are getting things set up, let's give another round of applause for our Special Initiatives team. And because I have a mic, ooh, Matt, don't go too far, because I need you. Because you came all the way from New York. Yeah, give it up for Matt. And Matt walked in and said, put me to work, how can I help? So I need you to grab a chair and put it on the stage for me. You brought your muscles with you, didn't you? All right. All right, so also on that end, you didn't have to do all that. You're just trying to show out now. Y'all can give Matt a hand, too. So while I slowly walk over here, we continue to clap and show our team love. I'm going to give you all a last couple seconds to write any questions down that you have on your origami papers and hand them to the volunteers that are walking around. If there's any last second questions. See a few. We're going to get started. Because we are used to working with people, we know that people are going to people, and we know that we also have a schedule, and we want to keep that schedule. And right now, my goal is to get y'all to lunch on time, amen? All right. So with that being said, we are not going to get to all of the questions, but this team will be around all day. So if you see them and they are willing, because consent is always a thing, to answer any more questions or to go further into any conversations you all have, you have all your QR codes with all the information in it. And so you have a lot of resources outside of these 4 individuals who have been working on this for a very long time and working really hard on this, but this is not the end-all be-all opportunity, okay? Okay? There they are. I thought I lost them, y'all. I was like, geez, all right. So again, I'm Tyre Bronson. I am on the Equity in Action Way board, and I'm going to facilitate this not panel discussion, but the Q&A. So I have some of your Qs, and they're going to give you the A's. We are going to start with, first of all, thank you to folks who have submitted questions and who are still submitting questions. Do we have any more? Okay. So the first one that we're going to start with, I think, is a really important question because we know that it's important to have shared meaning. And so someone in the audience wants to know, can you please define Black women, girls, and femmes?
Sure. So we really heavily relied on self-identification on the survey, which a lot of folks really appreciated and felt seen in their whole selves in that aspect. But when we talk about Black, we're describing folks who identify as Black regardless of national origin. And when we talk about femmes, we really talk about folks who are marginalized by gender. So that could be, women and girls, but also we had to focus on like trans and gender nonconforming identities as well.
Okay, thank you. Anybody want to add anything to that? All right, thank you. We're going to move on to our next question, and this is about your community engagement strategy. And as you moved around the state, intentionally engaging different type of communities, what approaches and barriers were described, or how would you describe any approaches or barriers in those different regions? And someone else specifically said, what were the vibes in rural Minnesota? It's on the card.
So I'm going to try my best to answer this. So thinking about barriers first, we heard, right, Emily mentioned we went to Rochester, we went to Duluth, we went to Fergus Falls and Marshall, so southeast, northeast, northwest, and southwest. And across these focus groups, a lack of identity concordance, as I had discussed, was a really big thing. And I remember that coming up particularly in northeast Minnesota while we were in Duluth and in the other regions as well. But one of the interesting things that I recall, particularly when we went out to Marshall in southwest Minnesota, was the articulation of how difficult it is to access services, like the unique barriers experienced by folks in greater Minnesota. So thinking about, for example, healthcare in particular, oftentimes, insurance won't cover specific providers that exist in that area. So folks would be required to go to the Twin Cities metro area in order to get those services that they need. So I think, again, identity concordance and thinking about those region-specific barriers, is a really big thing. But then, if we're talking the second part of the question, the vibes and the focus groups, it was all sort of, I think Emily mentioned this, but really incredible to be able to just be in community with folks for a couple of hours, get to chat, get into some of the questions that we had. And it was really incredible, and I want to highlight the work of the partners that we worked with, some of whom I think are in space today. So being able to work with them to bring folks into the focus group spaces and just be able to build those relationships, because it's an ongoing process. It is not over, and it's something that I know we want to continue to lean into. And Emily?
Is there a mic next to you? Go ahead.
Can everyone hear me? Great. I wanted to answer the vibes part of the question. So as Ben said, we did do the focus groups, but prior to the focus groups, we were building partnerships, and it was amazing vibes. And I think, I love the metro area, don't get me wrong, but there was something beautiful about greater Minnesota, especially our partners there. They long for community. So they continued to come back and say, hey, when are y'all coming back? Come back next week. Or, come to this event. Myself and another colleague who is not with us today, we went to this, I don't know what it was. It was just a day-long retreat in the woods. And it was so amazing to see a bunch of Black women in the woods, because we don't do that. And they're like, hey, y'all want to spend the night in the cabins and stuff like that. It was just good vibes. And we created an amazing partnership with them. And they were so influential in getting us into those, getting our focus groups filled and our interviews filled. So I think there's a stronger longing for community, and people are living really far apart. And I saw this willingness to travel an hour to be in space with other Black women. Not to say we wouldn't do that in the metro area, but there was just a strong desire for that. There was also the vibe that, hey, don't forget about us. That continued to happen over and over. And we heard that in the focus groups. Please don't forget about us. We're out here, and we're eager to build community with other Black women.
Yeah, I was gonna say kind of the same thing. Like, there's such strong, like, networks in greater Minnesota that are already built by Black women and femmes themselves. And so it was easy to kind of tap into that and like also hear from their experiences of building that community, like what's working, what are best practices, how to support people in a really holistic way. So yeah, just that strong network in greater Minnesota.
Yeah, and I had a follow-up question, but you already started to answer it because someone was also wondering if they are a person who lives in greater Minnesota, how could they essentially be a part of the second year of the piloting and those types of things? I would say go to our website. All of the information, all the reports and things are always posted there. And also while you're here today, connect with folks, right? So we can start to get a jump on that and you all can be a part of this great work as well. So we are going to move on to our other question. I'm watching the clock, y'all. I know. You got it. I got y'all. Here it is. So earlier in the presentation, you all mentioned self-care and safety for participants. We know that in traditional research, these types of councils are formed, and it's just a way to extract. And we get on this council and they take all our information and it's exhausting. And so to have that emphasis on self-care and safety for participants, can you all just share a little bit about how you set that container?
I can start answering it. So the self-care element is so important to us. We always have some kind of healing break. And some of you have met Kamisha Johnson, who did the amazing work yesterday. We tend to have her on, calls with us, in certain spaces with us. Also, Dr. Squires is in space with us doing breathing exercises. We're always ensuring that we have that experience first. It's never just show up for a focus group, tell us what we want to hear. We'll do an activity or we'll do something. There's been times that we've spent the entire day at a certain location before even doing the focus groups, getting to know people, talking to people. And in terms of safety, that is a really important question because this year with the ICE occupation, that was one of our greatest barriers and challenges, especially in our immigrant communities who are already distrustful. So we did pick secure locations in those instances. Folks were crying in focus groups about these topics. So yeah, that's very important to us. And I will say this, we also really prioritize the self-care of the team as well, going into certain parts of greater Minnesota where some of us are not welcome. So we always ensured we had enough staff, but we are protecting the identities of people. We are showing up in spaces where you cannot get in here unless you were supposed to be here. So I'll say that. Emily or Ben, any? Yeah.
I think you did a good job describing it. Yeah.
People were still sneaking notes to me after we will. We'll see. You can bring it up here, but we'll see. We'll get to it. We'll see. There is a question here. There's a couple of them that are kind of related. Are you gonna give it to Dr. Lewis? Like that's gonna make me ask the question? Oh Lord. Pause. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. This is actually one of my favorite questions for y'all to answer. What does action look like? And how do you employ these white systems with little motivation to change the status quo? Told you.
It's a hard one. I can start. I will remind myself of a conversation we had with Dr. Lewis about this. Our goal is not to convince anyone. We have been on calls where white men have wanted us to convince this person of why is this important? And it really caught me off guard hearing that, but I'm not surprised. That's not our role. Dr. Lewis always says it's our role to inspire folks by what we're doing. When we show passion, they will easily get on board. So I've seen that. It's about inspiring. It's about, you don't have to prove why it's important. You're just going out there, you're collecting stories and sharing those stories. If people want to work with us, it's amazing. But there may be folks that don't. And it's not our role to say, hey, please work with us. We're going to continue to do the work if the institutions support us or not. And as you can all see, Hennepin County was on board. There were other counties that said, oh, no, we can't do that. And that's okay. They'll see what they're missing out on, honestly. So I will say Dr. Lewis is all about that. Yeah, it's about inspiring, not convincing.
Yeah, I think we tried really hard to focus on, in our focus groups and interviews, really tangible changes that could be made in the processes and in the way that staff interact with Black women, girls, and femmes that can actually make that tangible change. So we're always focused on the tangible and thinking about the action, how our tool can hold people accountable to that, but make it really accessible and actionable for those organizations. So I think working with the pilot programs that we're working with from Hennepin County will be really a learning experience to see from them, what is possible, what barriers do they face, so that we can think about all the different issues that might arise with folks that implement the tool itself. And I also did want to highlight something that came up in a lot of our focus groups and data walk about how the work that we're doing is really focused on harm reduction and understanding that Black women and femmes across the state are creating these, we talked about, networks or hubs and systems outside of the system themselves that are already really powerful. And we've seen all the different events that we've gone to, like Dr. Bolton was talking about, or just seeing those really tangible networks. So we know that those are being created outside of the system, and we obviously want to encourage how we can support those systems as well, but also we're trying to take on the role of focusing on the systems themselves, doing that harm reduction, and trying to hold them accountable in that way. But knowing that it's not just one or the other, it's we're trying to have that two-pronged approach in understanding this issue of structural violence.
I just want to share briefly two things. So I know Dr. Lewis and Dr. Squires spoke briefly about legislative work that's going to be happening next year. So I do want to name that as a very tangible way that we're going to be working to take action, require use of this evaluation tool that is rooted in experiences, needs, and priorities of Black women, girls, and femmes. And then I want to sort of bounce off of what Emily shared. There are incredibly strong community networks and community-rooted organizations that are doing this work. And a really key component of our focus groups was what we had called a dream state sort of question section, where we're asking folks to imagine what these systems may look like. And as we think about change and action and hearing what Dr. Bolton shared about inspiring folks to come along and not trying to convince, we want to make sure that what we're doing is rooted in those dreams, in those desires of what we need to realize, and letting that guide us as we move through this. Because that was, one of, the incredibly impactful part of the conversations we had.
All right, thank you. We also have a question just kind of about the process for the statewide survey. There's curiosities around the time frame for it, how you all actually got to over 700 participants in this survey. Can you share a little about what that was like in that process?
Yes, I can share a bit. The process of the statewide survey was intense. It was fun but intense. It was open for about 3 months, right? Yeah, 3 months. We were doing a lot of work all over the state, going tabling at events, very different events on the weekends, going to different places, meeting organizations, partners as well. We couldn't have done it without partners. And just really trying to share it as much as possible, like personal networks, professional ones, really just doing the work, honestly, and showing up. That was the most important part.
Yeah, we also kind of assessed the landscape before we went out and did things. Like we looked at kind of like census data to see where folks might be located across the state so we could figure out how to best focus our efforts throughout the survey open period. And then in addition to that, I wanted to highlight two of our partnerships. So we did partner with the Hennepin County Library System. And so we were able to provide the survey, like physical copies of the survey at libraries. Folks could come up to library staff and ask for a copy of the survey to take it and submit it back to the staff. And also we had like codes at the library themselves so people could use library computers to take the survey as well. So that really helped with the accessibility of the survey, particularly in the metro area where a large amount of Black women and girls are living according to the census data. And I also wanted to highlight the St. Paul and Minnesota Foundation, which is also, I believe, one of our sponsors for the event today, but they also helped greatly with providing the survey to folks. So they provided incentives for 3 organizations to share out the survey. So they promised to give stipends or grants to those organizations if they shared out a certain number of surveys and got them filled out. And so that really also was really cool to see because not only like the survey was paid, but on top of that payment for taking the survey, that those funds were able to be distributed to folks in the community who took the survey. So on top of that payment, so especially at that time, SNAP benefits were really being cut. So it was really, I think, really cool thing to happen with one of our partners and sponsors. So yeah.
I also wanted to name that we could not provide the link online because we're in the age of AI and bots. So upon like the first day of opening the survey, it was like, oh, 300 new respondents. We're like, nah, this is not real. So that's why we were out in community so much. And we ensured every single Black woman, girl, or femme that took that survey was actually a Black woman, girl, or femme. I just want to name that. Because yeah, there was also some like random bots from Kenya and Nigeria taking the survey at first. So yeah, data quality was really important. Reliability, validity was very important. We ensured that.
Thank you. Just a quick question to the crowd. How many of you here took the survey, participated in it? All right, give yourselves a hand for that. We thank you so much. I also took the survey on a very hot day at the Black Minnesota State Fair. It was hot. They had tents and stuff, so that was nice, but it was hot. It was hot. That may have impacted my responses. No, I mean, it was what it was. I mean, it's in there now. So anyway, as the moderator, let's get back to the questions. So a couple of them that, again, I'm going to merge together. And also for the sake of time, the person that gave me this yellow one, because I feel like you've been watching me shuffle it around here, I'm going to hand it to or ask one of our panelists to address this question. You all can decide. I'll give it to you, and then we can make sure you get the answer to your question. But for the sake of time, because remember, my goal is to get you all to lunch on time, okay? Something, Dr. Lewis? Okay. So some folks are interested about your personal experiences with this project. Things that stood out to you, that maybe were surprising to you, that maybe touched your spirit in a certain way, that you're kind of carrying with you through this first phase of this 5-year project.
So, I only joined the team back in November, so I joined after the survey had closed out, and sort of at the time that we were working on developing our plan for the focus groups. And we knew that we wanted to hear specifically, as Emily mentioned, more from folks who identified as trans or gender nonconforming. We wanted to hear more from immigrants. We wanted to hear more from folks who self-identified as disabled. And as we were having these conversations, and as I was sort of going through the survey data, it's a lot of data, and I was trying very quickly to learn. As a trans person, I think hearing other trans folks who had responded to the survey express the impact of their inclusion in this project really hit hard for me, and really reinforced the importance of self-identification in creating spaces where people are able to articulate their experiences. There are lots of other things I could share, but I think hearing specifically folks share pride in the inclusion of trans and gender nonconforming voices was big for me.
I was a speaker at a domestic violence event raising money for victims of domestic violence. And it was before the survey was even released, but I went up there, I did my speech, and then I mentioned the survey even briefly. After that presentation, just getting people thinking about it, hey, we really need you to take this. And then afterwards, like several older Black women came up to me and just started crying and hugging me, and strangers, like, thank you so much for doing this work. And they started sharing their stories with me, stories of abuse, neglect, all of it. It was just very emotional. And then I would be in community, and it was the same kind of thing. People were so willing to share their stories. Like I said, complete strangers, but they were so grateful they said, people don't do this. They don't ask us what we think. So that was really powerful for me. I remember one night I came home texting Dr. Lewis, like, this is why I do what I do. And this is why I'm grateful to be on this project, because you see the impact on people's lives. Because they're not heard. So.
Yeah, that's amazing. And thank you all for sharing that as well. So one more time, please show some love and encouragement, send positive vibes for our Special Initiatives team. At this time, I'm going to invite Dr. Lewis up for just a couple of things before we get into our reflections, and then we'll get to breaking bread.
So really quickly, I want to address a question that was asked earlier just about how can we participate and engage, because the survey is going to happen again next year, and we want to stay connected to the work. So when we originally gathered the 75 plus partners, it was for the statewide survey. But then, as we were working with those partners, these partners wanted to stay connected, and we wanted them to stay connected, and we wanted to support the kind of maintenance of that group. So we have now created what is called the EVE Coalition. Both the original partners and new partners have joined us. So if there are folks who are interested in traveling with us, please reach out to us. And I also want to be clear, this is not a space just for Black women and girl and femme leaders. We need our accomplices at the table too. So this is a coalition that we have continued and is now becoming an organization-wide coalition, not just connected to the Special Initiative Project, to the broader work, where we are really trying to have shared goals around legislative action, resource development that supports Black women and girls, like creating like a tool that Black women and girls need in community. So this group, which originally came out of the 75 original partners, has said this can be much more. So we are honoring that desire, created this coalition, and if there's ways that you want to be involved, that is one of many ways. We'll be leaning on this coalition when we do this survey again next year. As Emily noted, there were so many amazing partnerships that we had to develop across the state to make it happen. We were at 80 plus events. We went to over 80 plus events. Right, in 3 months, over 80 events with individual codes. The code making was insane. But we had to do what we had to do for the fidelity of the survey. So I just wanted to put the plug out there for the EVE Coalition for folks who want to continue in the work, sit at the table and help us craft our engagement strategies. It is an open invitation.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Lewis. Y'all give Dr. Lewis a hand.